Consider the right triangle ABC at the right. Draw an altitude BD from B to the AC. In other words, they're asking us to draw the altitude from to the hypotenuse. So we know this is a right angle. Um, Interestingly enough, we now know, like we've done before, we can call this x, and if we want, this is y, but we know y is 13 minus x. This is, we're going to label this as h, and we're going to go ahead and fill in the chart as best we can. So in the chart, they said fill in the table, but do not solve. I don't know why, but this is kind of interesting. They just want you to see the proportions. So large triangle, hypotenuse is 13. Short leg is 5. Long leg is 12. Medium triangle, hypotenuse is 12. The short leg is H. Long leg is Y, or 13 minus X, however you want to look at that. I like 13 minus X myself. Small triangle is, where is it? Hypotenuse, 5. Um, Short leg is X, and long leg is H. Now, a couple of things I want you to see, you guys. We're going to play with this, develop this as we go. But notice I got a couple of H's there that are within, if you will, within a proportion. That's important later on. We've got that the case here. If I use these two and these two, notice that I've got long legs. If I use, say, these two here and these two here, I've got the 12s, right? Which is kind of interesting. Those end up being the same when you cross multiply the same number. So there's some patterns here that we're going to look for as we go. I would take this one next step further. They said don't solve. Okay. However, I mean, I might consider wanting to solve for h. So if I wrote a proportion for h, that would be 13 over 12 equals 5 over h, and we could solve that. Okay. Once I know h, right, then I could find x, and I could do this in a couple of different ways. Try this. Take a look at this. If I go 13 over 5 equals 5 over x, pretty interesting. Notice I didn't have to use h. In case I made a mistake on h, I'm going to use numbers that I already have. Once I've solved for x and h, I've pretty much got this done. I can solve for y, and I really only had to solve two proportions. I could solve these two here with these two. So I could set up one more proportion if I want. 13 over 12 equals 12 over y per se if you want. So you're looking for proportions that can be solved given the information. This gets to be fun when you start seeing these connections. So let's see if we can figure out some of these connections. All right, so we have here a right triangle with an altitude drawn to the hypotenuse. We can fill in some information. Notice that this value here is 100 minus 36, or 64. If I were just to fill in the numbers that are given here, okay, the hypotenuse is 100. I don't have either of the legs for the large triangle. For the medium triangle, I have a short leg and long leg, x and 64. X is the short leg, and 64 is the long leg. For the small triangle, I have the short leg of 36 and long leg of x. Notice the 100 now isn't being used. So my proportion is x over 36 equals 64 over x. If I were to go ahead and cross multiply, I'm going to end up with x squared equals, and I'm going to say 36 times 64. Now I didn't multiply those on purpose because I want to take the square root, and those are already perfect squares. So if I go ahead and consider taking the square root of this, I will end up with x is equal to the square root of 36, which is 6, times 8. So I know over here x equals 48. We've got our solution with that. Now, this is a formula that if you like formulas and can memorize them easily, then um, this gets real easy. If not, the chart is an easy way to go. So this formula would say h squared, the height, right? The altitude to the hypotenuse, call it the height. H squared is equal to the product of the parts. Okay, the parts being that hypotenuse broken up into pieces. Okay, so that's one formula. Height squared equals the products of the parts. Let's keep going. Number 6 says I've got a hypotenuse of 25, so I can split that again into 25 minus 9 is 16. And let's just go ahead and take what we have. We could finish filling out this whole thing, but we're looking for x in particular. So let's fill in the chart. Hypotenuse of the big triangle is 25. X in the big triangle is the small leg, so that's x. Okay. The medium triangle, all we know is the long leg to be 16. Okay. In the small triangle, we know the hypotenuse to be x and the small leg to be 9. Okay, now notice the 16 that I filled in this case didn't make any difference. My proportion here is 25 over x equals x over 9. I automatically fill in the 16 because it's an easy calculation and you don't know if you need it until you have some more experience. Cross products are going to give you x squared equals 9 times 25. And again, I'm not going to multiply those. That'll give me a big number that is somewhat, irrelevant at the time. Right now, if I take the square root of both sides, right, I'm going to end up with x is equal to the square root of 3, or square root of 9 is 3, and square root of 25 is 5, or x equals 15. This formula, notice, is leg squared equals the part adjacent times the hypotenuse. Okay, and that's another formula that's going to happen again. Now, number 7 is one that you've seen before. It's like very much like number 5. I'm going to have you stop the video and do this yourself. Stop the video and I'll give you the answer when you're done. So maybe you were able to come up with this answer. I hope so. X equals 12. And notice that the proportions come out nice in the chart. Maybe you also notice that this is h squared equals the product of the parts. 9 times 16. Okay, so without going through the chart, I could just simply say x squared equals 9 times 16 and solve it from there. All right, number um, 8, I would consider using that. You've got the height, right? Height squared equals uh, x times 16. You could always fill out the chart. I'm not gonna do that for you. Uh, but I know then that h is equal to um, sorry, h was 12. So actually, I can just go ahead and put in 144 there, right? 144 equals x times 16. X therefore equals 144 divided by 16, or x is equal to 9. Um, the last one, number 9, is very much like number 6. And again, use the chart. You can stop the video and use the chart. But I'm going to suggest some of you memorize formulas. Remember, the leg squared is equal to uh, the adjacent part times the hypotenuse. Okay, so if that's the case, 60 squared is equal to 36 times x. 60 squared is 36 with two zeros on it. 36x. That's supposed to be a 36 right there. If I divide both sides by 36, we end up with x is equal to 100, and we're done. So again, the chart is simple enough if you can't remember formulas. If you can remember formulas, then there's a couple of them here that make it real easy to solve.